Welcome to another episode of the Unprofessional Parenting Podcast. I'm Matt.
And I'm Lainey.
And this is the podcast where we laugh, cry, and stumble our way through the wonderful chaos of raising tiny human beings.
But let's face it, none of us actually have a clue what we're doing.
No.
But that's half the fun of it, right?
Right. And today we're going to be diving into the art of faking it until you make it in parenting. And spoiler alert, I think we've all been there.
You know those moments when you're convincing your kid or maybe yourself that you've got it all figured out? Yeah, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, so we'll be sharing our biggest parenting bluffs, some strategies that actually work, and probably maybe a little bit overshared, just enough to make you feel better about your own parenting fails.
So grab your coffee, your wine, your Bible, whatever's getting you through the day, and let's get into it.
Let's get into it. All right, Lainey, I've heard it said before that parenting is the only job where you're hired without any prior experience or training. So how do you navigate the chaos when you're still figuring it out yourself? And I think that's what we want to talk about today is how to fake it until you make it as parents. Have you ever been there before?
Yeah, I honestly feel like this is how I live 80% of my life. Is just in all circumstances, just faking it until someone's like, oh my gosh, you're really good at that. And then I'm like, oh wow, maybe I am. Maybe I am good at this.
And then that's when you know you've made it.
That's
right?
when I know I've made it.
The
yeah.
faking it is paid off to actually making it.
Yeah, I'm like, if you only knew what was actually going on in my mind as this was happening.
What was the moment when you realized that you had no idea what you were doing as a parent, but you pretended like you did? Do you have a story or something you want to share with us?
Yeah. Okay, I feel like Matt and I's parenting has basically just been faking it until we make it.
Right.
Because our story of parenting is not the traditional, got pregnant.
It's a good place to start, yeah.
Prepared for like 10 months for a baby.
Had a nursery all painted.
Right. Like we didn't have time to read the books on what to do when your baby comes home from the hospital type of thing. So we were thrown directly into parenting. We went from no children to parenting an 8 and 10-year-old.
It's a toss into the deep end.
Yes. We just dove straight in.
Right. And so we missed out on, again, some of the most formative years of our kids' lives, right? And so even when it comes to bonding and when it comes to parenting from a child, we're trying to institute new rules and expectations and things literally on the fly, not knowing what to expect.
Yeah, and we also skip the stages of life where a kid just believes everything you absolutely say because you're an adult and they're a toddler.
Yeah, and you're cool because you're their dad and mom.
Right. We went straight to 8 and 10-year-old who are kind of suspicious of everything and are like, if you lie to me, I'll probably know. If you don't know what you're doing, I'm probably going to know, because kids have a good radar for that type of stuff.
Yeah, they're smart.
So we just we skipped the whole beginning part, and we had to fake it and still do.
Yeah, we're faking it all the time. I mean, there's new situations that arise every single day where we're like, oh, wasn't expecting that one, and let's try to draw up a plan of what our action's going to be from here, right?
Yeah. What was a specific moment when you realized you had no idea what you were doing as a parent, but you had to pretend because like there's kids staring at you?
Right.
So you had to pretend like you knew what you were doing.
For me, specifically in my mind goes back to one instance. Well, there's plenty of them, but one that sticks out that I can actually share on this podcast is with my son. My neighbor came over one day at our old house, walked over to our house and knocked on the door, and I chatted with him outside on our front porch, and he had informed me that my son, who was then, was it 8 years old? He was 7 at the time, probably.
Yeah, like 7.
Had taken a blue Sharpie and scribbled all over his white car in his driveway. Like all over, all down the side of it, there was Sharpie literally everywhere on this man's car. And so I'm sitting there in just a pool of embarrassment, like melting in front of this man. Like, what do I say next? Is he angry? What do I say to my child? How am I going to coach him through how to handle this situation? And how do we move forward from here? And so it was one of those things where I'm like, I don't know what to do next. So I'm just going to think on the fly and try to figure out what the best course of action is. If it was me, because I'd been in similar situations as a kid, I didn't ride in anybody's car, but there was a lot of destruction in my youth. What can I draw from in my past And what can I draw from in the immediate that's going to help me get to a place where I can coach my son through this? So we ended up like walking over to his house. I made him apologize, knock on the door, say he was sorry.
Yeah, you're like, sir, I'll take care of this.
Yeah. I told him I'd take care of it. I told him I'd pay for it. And he kind of laughed it off. Thankfully, he was a great neighbor. But yeah, so that's an instance. What about you? What is something where you realized that you had to fake it in the moment?
It was the first phone call I received from another parent that my daughter, was having like friendship issues with her daughter. I think she was in 5th grade. So that was a time when I'm on a phone call, which, by the way, I don't know if any other millennials are like this. I cannot stand talking on the phone to people. I hate it.
I enjoy it.
Gosh, I like to prepare what I'm going to say. I don't like being caught off guard or surprised, because then I feel like there's a lot of pressure to give the right answer and the right response back, especially in a situation like this. So I had to think on the fly. This wasn't a text message. I had to think quickly on how I was going to respond to this mom, who I perceived as being an experienced mom.
Yes.
And here I am.
A professional, if you will.
She's probably a professional.
Yes.
And here I am, completely inexperienced. Like, oh, let me go talk to my daughter about that. So.
Yeah, what do you even say in the moment?
I honestly don't exactly remember what I said, other than I'm very sorry. I'm sorry if my daughter has done anything to hurt your daughter. Let me, I will talk to her. Let's fix this. Thank you for letting me know. And then the parenting of my child through that, like, hey, I heard you're having friendship issues.
Right.
Tell me about that.
Yeah. And usually met with a stone wall.
Right. Well, and then the other thing is I immediately then start remembering all of the friendship issues that I had in middle school and high school. I start feeling, well, I'm totally unqualified to have this conversation with her, because I also was terrible at friendships in middle school as a girl.
Yeah, so that brings about the bluff, right? You have to like walk in there and say the right thing and do the right thing and walk away and hope that the Lord used your conversation to redeem the situation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, bluffs are a common thing for parents. Like you got to throw out a bluff here and there, and hopefully your kid doesn't call you on it. But speaking of bluffs, like what is the biggest bluff that you've ever pulled off with our kids that you think they actually bought?
I'd like to start by saying I don't regularly go around lying to our children.
Good.
But, but I am down for making them believe things that aren't necessarily factual.
A little stretch, if you will.
It is kind of fun to me.
Yeah.
Because it's, kids have good imaginations.
Yeah, we like to provide a little mystery in the home.
Right.
Yeah.
So before I tell this story, I just want to say Santa, trigger warning, spoiler alert.
For all you parents out there.
If you have a child listening with you right now,
cover their ears and their eyes.
Listen to this podcast later.
Yeah.
So we did Santa for our son when he moved into our home, because he was still very much into Santa. And so he asked for a play kitchen that year. My parents were kind enough to buy him that play kitchen. Well, they came over to our house. He opens all of his, quote, Santa gifts or whatever. And we realize later in the morning, me and my parents, oh my gosh, the play kitchen is still in my parents' car.
Yeah. Unassembled.
I mean, yeah, there wasn't like
the pots and pans.
But yeah, all the accessories to it.
Still in box.
It's just still sitting in my parents' car. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Because this is like the big gift he asked for from Santa. So I distract him in the family room, playing with the toys he just got and whatever. And my parents snuck the play kitchen in through the garage and set it up in his bedroom in just a few minutes.
Genius. And
we just left it there and like moved on with the morning. And like a few minutes later, he walks into his bedroom. And do you remember him screaming?
Yes.
Like shrieking.
He screamed for his sisters first, which was awesome.
Yes, he did call them.
I love that.
Come look at my room. He was so excited and then proceeded to talk about how Santa had come back to visit him that morning.
He had forgotten one thing.
Because he forgot to leave the play kitchen. And he came back to our house specifically for him when he wasn't looking.
Special moment.
And set this stuff up in his room. And we just went with it. It was it was amazing. He totally believed it.
Yeah, continue the charade for at least another year.
Yeah.
It was good.
It was so fun.
It's pure. Bluffs do work sometimes, and sometimes you have to incorporate that into your parenting, right? Whether it be to keep somebody in line or to make sure that directions are being followed. I think it's an addition to just parenting in general. Like you have to be okay with doing that sometimes,
right?
In my opinion,
right. I mean, faking it until you make it is essential in a lot of aspects of parenting, because like we've said before, there is no perfect manual on what to do and how to do this thing.
Right.
So if you're feeling like you're in these situations and you are just grasping at what to do next and you have no idea, so you just fake whatever you got to do until it works, we're all there.
Right. And I think one of the things that we need to be okay with and make true for all parents out there is being able to admit that you're faking it until you make it, right?
Yeah, but are you admitting this to your kids? Like, how do you...
No, you don't admit it to your kids.
How do you go about that?
You
know?
reconcile it with yourself.
Okay.
And you're just like, I'm not perfect. And so I'm going to have to do certain things in certain situations that, may not line up perfectly. And I'm going to have to fake it. I'm going to have to get there somehow. I know the end result, but I have to get there somehow. But why do you think... Maybe here's a good question for you is why do you think parents feel the need to appear like they have everything under control? Because I think we run around a lot of times, even when you're talking about that conversation with that mom about our daughter having friend issues with her daughter. And that mom's reaching out from a place of protection for her daughter.
Right.
But also just protection for our daughter as well. And so we're thankful for that. But you don't want to come across as... or you do want to come across as I'm doing the right thing. Like I know what it takes. I have this perfect plan for my kids. I'm doing all the things that are required of me, and I'm outwardly looking like I have everything under control. But really, it's like the duck under, like the feet under the water, right?
Yeah.
You see the duck just chilling on the lake, but his feet are going 1,000 miles per hour.
Right.
So why do you think parents need to feel like or appear that they have everything under control?
Yeah, I think there's a heavy, heavy pressure in our society for perfectionism in general.
Yeah.
And I think that especially bleeds through in a really negative way into parenting.
Yeah, 100%.
Parents are expected to achieve this level of perfectionism when it comes to raising their kids. And I think personally, I always felt this pressure as foster parents that there were these extra eyes on us all the time.
Yeah.
Right? Like we were raising kids that the government or the state looked at another set of parents and said, you're not doing good enough. So you can't raise your kids anymore.
You have to go somewhere else.
They have to go somewhere else and
Right.
go to a different family because you're not doing good enough. And now I know that it's way more complex than just that, right? Like there's abuse and neglect and all these really horrible things involved. But on a general level, there was always a pressure that I personally felt to not to be good enough.
Right.
Like when the state is coming and doing home visits and people at church are looking at us because we're a foster family, like everyone's looking at you through the lens of you are a special type of parent. I just have always felt that added pressure of I have to be really good at this and my children's behavior has to reflect that I'm really good at this because I'm raising somebody else's children.
Yeah. All the pressure's on you.
So it's so much pressure. And I know that same pressure exists for biological parents as well.
100%.
Like it's not just unique to fostering and adopting, but there's just like back to the perfectionism in our society. Like everyone just feels this need to be perfect because you are judged, or there's assumption that you will be judged and scorned if you don't have all the right answers right away.
Right. I also think parents have a desire to protect their own image. I think in every human being, we want to protect our reputation. We want to do things that are going to not take away from who we are and our character as human beings. And so I do think that sometimes as parents, we project the things that our kids are doing in a way that they're going to affect our reputation going forward. Like if our kid acts out in school, we must be bad parents at home. Or if our kid, our kid has this conversation with a friend, we must be teaching our kids the wrong things, right? And so we have this image that we want to protect, and I think that's one of the reasons why it creates in our culture the need to be perfect, right? The need to be perfect. And you don't have to look far. I mean, you can go on social media and see so many parents who are faking it on social media. They are posting the most joyous occasions of their family with their kids, but they don't talk about the hardships. They don't talk about the tough conversations that are happening, in the bedroom late at night while tears are flowing out of their eyes, right? It's the image that we feel like we need to hold on to and protect that I think guides and governs some of the ways that we handle these situations, right? And so we have the need to be perfect.
Yeah.
We have the need to be perfect.
Yeah. I remember talking to a mentor of mine. I love her so much. She's one of those people where you just want to spend every minute of every day with and just glean from her example as a human being.
Yeah.
And I asked her, she raised four kids and is now starting over raising a baby now that her four sons are grown. And I asked her, I was like, did you ever not like your kids? Like, did you ever have those days or moments where you're like, man, I just really don't like you right now? And she was like, real. Oh my gosh. She said, yes, all the time. And I said, well, then what do you do with that? Like, what do you do in those moments? Because I can tell you how I react, which is not healthy. Like when I'm having those moments where I just don't like what my kids are doing. I don't like the attitude that they're bringing. I don't like a decision they made, right? Like, but I recognize that the way that I naturally would want to react in those moments is unhealthy. So I'm trying to glean from her, like, how do you remain this closeness with your kids through those moments? And she told me something, I'm never going to forget it. And I'm going to continually be practicing this throughout my life. But she said, you literally have to fake liking them. And she said, not every demonstration of emotion from you or connection from you has to be felt at the deepest part of your heart. Like you can be upset with them. You can dislike whatever they have done, or maybe you don't even like feel like hanging out with them in that moment, but you have to fake what you display to them. Unconditional love, unconditional grace. Now, this is not permissive parenting. I don't want to get that mixed up here. But what she was saying was like, on the tough days, you are going to have to fake energy and enthusiasm and happiness and joy. Oh, I am so glad to see you after school today, even though I saw you have 3 missing assignments and failed that test, right? Like I am so happy to see you because of who you are. And I think that's so important. And that's another piece of faking it until you make it, because I think it's really interesting. There is research that actually shows that consciously practicing or like faking these types of positive emotions like gratitude, joy, enthusiasm, all these things can really lead to positive outcomes, even if these emotions don't initially arise in you in like a natural way. So engaging in these types of emotions, quote, like faking these emotions, can actually end up promoting feelings that like turn legitimate and turn genuine.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
I think for me, I get to a place where I need to let the emotions that come in my actions and my words come from the truth about my kids, right? The truth is I love them.
Right.
The truth is I'm protective of them. The truth is I value them. I might not always like them, if you will. And that sounds kind of harsh, but being around our kids is not always a joyous occasion, right? It's not always butterflies and all good things. It is the hard things too. It's the annoying things too. But for me, a helpful thing for me personally is to really look at them as someone who God has entrusted me to love and to pour out my heart to them and to show the love of Christ to them, right? And so for me, I have to get to a place where I'm reminding myself constantly of the truth of that God has put them in our house for a reason. that these are our children for the season of for the rest of their lives, and really pulling from that truth the way that I want to react to the things that they bring about, even the negative times. And so, faking it in action is a little bit different than faking it with the truth that right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so I think that's maybe one of the hacks, if you will, of life that I would call for faking it until you make it. Parenting.
That's your parenting hack.
Yeah, parenting hack is love your kids. That's it.
Wow.
So, hope you do.
That's like those TikTok videos that show you these hacks, but it's really like 20 more steps than just doing the actual thing.
Here's a 5-minute hack, but you have to do 36 steps and own 150 tools in order to do it.
Right. That's a good one. I'm glad you shared that one, Matt.
Yeah. For all you people out there, just love your kids more, man. That's all it is.
Yeah.
That's all it is. And honestly, I do think, looking at the God-given responsibility that you have to be a parent, it's an honor to be a parent. Not everybody can be a parent, and not everybody will be a parent, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're even witnessing this really drastic change of focusing on the positivity of the family unit to now it's almost spoken about negatively. Like I see people all the time online talking about like how they're so happy they don't have kids and like, ew, kids and ew, being a parent. It's like such a negative conversation nowadays. Right. So yeah, I mean, it's not for everybody. Like you said, like not every single person is created to be a parent.
But that's not the norm though. I mean, it's not, it is a blessing and an honor bestowed upon by God to allow you to do these things.
Yeah.
So
do you want to know my parenting hack?
Yeah, give me a parenting hack.
My parenting hack for making it look like I've got it together when I really don't. I've got a couple that I'll share.
Okay. One,
when we walk out of this house, we're all wearing a similar color palette. You laugh.
Why? What? What kind of a hack is this?
Listen. Okay. I might not be an expert at it. There's people who are better than I because I don't want it to look super intentional. But if we are going somewhere where I know pictures are going to be taken of our family or we are going to like look like a family unit, this happens mostly on holidays, right? Like you think of like Mother's Day at church, Easter, Christmas pictures, like, right? All these things. Wait a second.
Can I just interrupt and say that the first holiday that you spoke of was Mother's Day?
Yeah.
Is that the most important one?
It's just on my mind because I thought of the picture that we were in.
Okay, go ahead.
Where we were matching.
Yeah, okay. Go ahead with the pastel matching colors.
Okay. We look like a family unit. We look like we belong together.
A team.
We look intentional.
Uniforms.
If you haven't, actually, I probably shouldn't recommend this, but I picked up this parenting hack from Kevin Hart, of all people.
Wow.
Yes. He made a bit in one of his stand-ups about dressing his son to look like him and his wife and how they like want to look like a unit. Like his son behaves better when they like look like a unit. The world takes them more seriously when they look that. Okay. So I took this hack from Kevin Hart and I was like, maybe there's something to it. And so I just want us to look, put together and nice when we go out. Mm-hmm. It doesn't change how our children act, unfortunately, but it makes me feel better. So that's my...
it helps you fake it.
It helps me fake it.
Sometimes.
And okay, yes, but also when... I don't want to get too deep on this because it's just the color palette of t-shirts, right? But where our family does not look alike naturally. We don't have the same DNA. We don't look alike, all the things that come with adoptive families. But if we can look alike in how we're dressing, we can...
conquer the world.
We can,
right?
People take us more seriously.
Yeah.
Okay. Second hack, on a more serious note.
This is the good one.
Yeah. To make it look like I've got it together when I really don't. Mm-hmm. I think it's really important to keep your calm and to emotionally regulate yourself, even when your children are not emotionally regulated. Mm-hmm. Take some deep breaths, whatever. But I think that it's really important to surround yourself with a group of people that you don't have to fake it around, that you don't have to be put together when you're around. Because there are people, you know, in the outer circles of your life, you think about your inner circle people, but there are people on the periphery of your life, acquaintances, coworkers, whatever, who you need to look put together for. Like you don't want to be a hot mess everywhere you go.
You got to have a safe space.
Right. You don't want to be overly vulnerable and overshare all of your issues with everyone you know. But you really need to have that inner circle of people that you trust, that you don't have to have it all together with.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that is a hack to me
of
being able to be vulnerable and lean on other people, lean on a support system so that when we do need to have it together, you've got more bandwidth for it.
Right. I heard somebody once say also, another hack for you is to be very good at the second conversation, right? Because what happens is sometimes we react out of emotion. Sometimes we get angry. Sometimes we say things we don't want to say to our kids. Sometimes we handle things incorrectly while we're trying to fake it till we make it, right? And these situations catch us by surprise, and it doesn't mean that in the moment we might fail at responding the correct way. But the second conversation is so important, if not more important than the first conversation in the way that you react. Because the second conversation is where there has been a little bit of time that has passed, right? Where you can go back, circle back with your child and talk to them about what happened, debrief with them, let them know of what happened in the moment that was either breaking a rule, hurting a relationship, or something along those lines, and coaching them and teaching them about grace, about forgiveness, about reconciliation. And even if you need to, in that moment, to say that you are sorry for the way that you handled things as well. The second conversation is so important.
Yep.
Yeah.
Totally agree. So taking all of this into consideration, Matt, do you think that faking it can eventually make you a better parent? Or does faking it until you make you a good parent? Or is it bad?
Make you a good parent, or does it make you better as a parent?
Well, I guess either or is it like a bad thing? Like, should people avoid it?
Well, again, I don't think that you can prepare for every situation. So there are going to be times where you're going to have to fake it. But I do think that parenting is sometimes a trial and error process. From what I understand of my limited time of being a parent, is you are constantly trying new techniques to better reach your kids and help your kids understand what life is all about. Like it is a constant battle with your emotions. It's a constant struggle of what to say and the right thing to say at the moment. And it's a lot of going back on things and going forward with things. It's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back sort of thing. But it's a trial and error process, in my opinion, to get results. And as you do anything, trial and error process, I do think that you tend to understand situations a little bit better. Like you look for keys in things and conversations and situations where you know how your kid's going to react, you know how you are going to react, and then you make plans to change it in the future off of what you've done in the past. So it's a learning process for sure.
Yeah. You build confidence with experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. I believe that it's a balance really between faking it and perfectionism, because what you don't want to do while faking in certain situations is necessary, you don't want it to become overwhelming to the point of needing to be perfect in all things.
Yes.
There has to be a balance, a line that you walk of being okay with being wrong and being okay with failing. And then why are you laughing, Matt?
It's hard. Those are hard things.
Oh, I thought you were laughing ironically that I was the one sharing this thought.
I would never do that. But you are correct. You don't want to flirt with the line of perfectionism. You can't.
No.
You can't.
No. You don't want to be overly vulnerable with your children. You don't want to be a train wreck in front of your kids, because they are looking to you for security and stability, and you are their prime example of regulation. But You also don't want to show them an example of someone who has to be perfect all the time, who can never fail, who can never admit that they are wrong, who can never apologize for being wrong. You know, you don't want to swing the pendulum too far to either side.
Right.
As in all
a
things
failure
in life.
mindset in them, right?
Right.
Of like, I'm a failure. I'll never be able to match up to the standards.
Right.
And
Right.
so,
or when they get old enough and they realize that you're not perfect, that creates a relational crisis there.
yeah, and their hero is flawed.
Well, listeners, we want to hear from you. So we want to know, leave us a comment about what is the most ridiculous thing that you have ever faked as a parent. So share your stories, leave us a comment, and we might even read them on the next episode.
That would be so fun.
I want to know them, but I also want to share them because these types of things need to be shared.
You are not alone. Well, this has been Matt
And Lainey.
with another episode of Unprofessional Parenting Podcast. See you next time.